Hello and welcome. This is episode 8 of a podcast Engineer-to-Manager. My name is Alex Maestrenko. I'm a podcaster and advisor to the CDTO here in Kyiv City Council, Ukraine. In this podcast, we are diving into the essence of engineering management. We explore what engineering management is and what are the challenges and opportunities. For this journey, I invite experienced engineering managers from different parts of the world. Today's guest is Johan Nehlin. Hello, Johan. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing good, thank you.
So you're a senior engineering manager at Spotify. You worked at this company since 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely correct.
In different roles, as far as I know. And prior to joining Spotify, you worked for a consulting company. That's an interesting shift that I would like to cover today as well, how you got from their consulting to their product company. Would you like to add anything? Is everything correct?
No, totally correct. I've been here, 9.5 years soon, or soon 10 actually, but had my first 3.5 years in Sweden before I moved over into the US. Transferred into a different department, different team.
I've recently seen a statistics on their average work duration for a person to work for a company, and 9.5 years is an outlier. Definitely, like for something is kind of a maximum I've seen on the average. So you're definitely have seen some changes in Spotify that would be great to discuss today.
Yeah, totally.
Before we jump in the conversation, dear listeners, and please subscribe and like this video. There are more conversations coming very soon. So Johan, let's talk about your story about joining like Spotify 9 years ago, or like going to the past. I don't know if you still can remember all the little details of that shift. So just to give your and our audience their background, where I'm coming from, here in Ukraine, we have lots of consulting companies, lots of outstaffing and lots of outsourcing companies where people work in teams for some bigger companies like Spotify, Google, Alphabet, and so on and so forth. So this is very standard for us to have to work on board for a kind of a consultancy or outsourcing, outstaffing. How did you move, and why did you move from a consultancy to a product organization?
Fascinating story, fascinating question. But I worked for a consultancy company for 7 years.
Whoa.
What we did was CRM implementation, usually in the telco space, but also a bunch of other companies. What I felt was, the length of the project was a little bit different. It was like 3 months, 5 months, or 7 months, but always it came to a change. We went in there and tried to help a company transform their business into, getting more revenue or making sure the customers don't churn, et cetera, all in terms of CRM, right? And I found myself like very passionate about like continuing and helping the business even further, right? I felt I was, almost more passionate sometimes than the people at the companies themselves or at some of my colleagues. So, after 7 years, I'm a little bit restless person sometimes. My tenure at the companies doesn't speak to that, but that's why it was helpful for me to be a consultant. So I could do like short stints and learn a lot from every new engagement and assignment. 2013, like I felt a little bit, I wouldn't say misplaced, but I felt like I probably needed something new. And at that point in time, like I was lucky, Spotify reached out to me and with the CRM software that I worked a lot with at the time, Spotify had implemented it too. Mm-hmm. So they're like, hey, are you interested in coming over? And, at that point in time, Spotify was not as big as we are right now.
How big was it?
It was a little bit uncertain. When I joined, I think we were around 1,000 people in the world.
Oh, that's quite a big company already.
Yeah. it wasn't small, but it was like worldwide too. But at that point in time, I didn't know what I was going to, or rather, like when they reached out and when I talked to my then manager and like the team that I was going to manage and everything, I wasn't certain that I was going to go, because I knew what I had, but I didn't know what I was going into, and it wasn't like established as now, you know. So it was actually a former friend of mine who I worked with and who managed me for a while, because I've always loved music and I always loved technology. So I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do? Am I going to do this? And he said, "You're absolutely stupid. It's the two things you absolutely love in life. Just do it." And at that point in time, it's just a realization, someone helping you like gain that thought. It's like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. And that's when I joined. That's when I said, yeah, let's do this.
Nice. So you were basically kind of saying, well, there is a better way to help companies and also combine your two passions.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I felt. I wanted to invest long term in a company that had my two passions, but like long term instead of just going in there helping for a temporary and then going out again.
Nice. Well, so basically, it was a nice
great
match
timing.
and a good timing when you were there. Do you miss anything from their consulting world?
No, I can't say that. I think it depends on what company you would work in when you talk to a product company. I'm fortunate that I've been able to move around between different teams, between different countries. Growing teams from small to big. It's kind of like a consultancy when you grow a team. That's kind of what you do when you go into
yeah, because with a consultancy, you can change the domains, for instance. Even with the CRM, you can change the different domains and you can see kind of and grow yourself as a broad professional in different domains. Like with telco, as you mentioned, you can apply CRM in the banking space and so on and so forth. So you can grow an application of your technical expertise. Whereas when you join the product company, well, you cannot do it, right? You work on a product or a set of products that this company owns and that this product develops.
Yeah, but I think we as a company, especially, value mobility and cross fertilization between the different teams. Right? When I started, I joined a team and was responsible for like the customer service tools to administer user accounts and communicate with our customers out there. So you see, that's why I got in. That's the entry point for me. But then I transferred so now I'm in the platform mission where we help other engineers become faster engineers, right? Remove the operational toil. So what I've done a transition inside the company too. I was going to say facilitated, but something that we look at and say it's great. We even have it in our career frameworks for engineers. If you want to be like a staff engineer and above, you should have seen different domains. It's like beneficial for you.
That makes sense.
And as a manager, and as a manager, like for you to reach a higher, you should have facilitated moves and cross fertilization of your engineers in the team or in the company.
Yeah. Before we jump to your current role, I'm curious to talk a little bit about Spotify and changes of Spotify that you have seen, experienced as a person, as an employee for the last 9.5 years. Because we all know this world famous Spotify squads organization, right? That came basically from their Spotify. As far as I remember, it was a blog post or something like that lots of companies try to adapt. And then at one point in time, I think their Spotify itself went out with another post saying, well, it's not really working for us as we change as an organization. And they're basically kind of ruining their application or ruining an example of a good framework that has been established some time ago. Have you seen that?
Yeah, well, I still think we believe in like the squads being the lowest point and like the delivery units, right? We still have squads. So I have 8 squads in my my organization that I oversee. We still believe in that. What we've added on top is just a little bit more alignment. because if you think about it, if you have all the employees running around, and not thinking what the other person does, then it's very distributed and very much inventing the same thing in different places. So we needed to add more alignment. So that's what we've done.
Isn't what their manager is that brings alignment to their people running around, or is it kind of their role that the person...
No, but what I'm talking about, like missions, okay. If you think a team, let's say a squad is a team of 8, right? I don't know how many hundreds of squads we have, right? So, but each squad has a manager. So then if you think that one manager here is separated from a manager here, right? So that's why you need alignment on the objective level, or on a mission level, to make sure that the teams talk to each other.
I thought you had that about cross-functional and kind of in the framework of squads, or with the Spotify you had that alignment because you had like squads being horizontal and then vertical as well, or connections.
Oh, I think you're talking about guilds.
Yeah.
Well, guilds is more of a, like, if you're a back-end guild, But if you just think like, as we grow, when I joined, we were 1,000, and now I don't know how many thousands we are, but a lot more than that.
Well, we'll put the number in the recording here for a big number of the official sources, number of employees in Spotify.
Yeah, exactly. So with growth in a company, you need to know a little bit more of what the other teams are doing, right? And that's what I mean with alignment. If 5 teams are working on the same feature, right, or the same player, you need to know that what you're doing is not breaking the other one. Or if you're delivering like a new feature for the app or for anything, you need to make sure that all 5 teams or all 10 teams or 50 teams or whatever is aligned in what the delivery is.
Can you organize like a huge backlog for the whole company so that everybody has access to it, and basically that's it?
No, I think it requires a lot more work than that. But we have a list of a company priority board, right? Prior board, which tells what is the highest priority. And then the teams that are contributing to that know what they're contributing to, right? But that's not only one team. That's what I'm saying. Even though that the squads are themselves like cross-functional in some ways, any objective might still require a lot more manpower than 8 teams in the squad.
Got it. And when you joined, you said you had a view of the company. You had a match between what you like and what company could provide you. Is it still the case? Has anything changed? Either your passions or the goal of the company? Well, might be, right? 9 years is a lot of time.
Yeah, bigger country launches back then, or we did more concerts in the office. Also, the pandemic has affected us all. I think it's a little bit of a slowdown, but the mission is still there. The passion is still there. I just recently had, from when I started to now, I also have 2 children, 2 kids. So I guess life changes a lot over 10 years. But I went into the company, to the office for a family event. I brought my daughter in, and there was a lot of music and a lot of instruments and a lot of the same theme, the same passion stays.
I'm really happy for you. You have this match and it stays for a longer period of time. Really nice.
Yeah. What I think, this is a story I've told many people. What I think is like the biggest reason of why I wanted, or why I have stayed so long, is like this constant drive of like improving and changing, right? So when you remember I told you when I was a consultant, every time I went out to a customer and I said, hey, we need to change this, there was always like, okay, submit a request for a change, and then you needed to do something, and then when you needed to budget it, and maybe in 6 months we will fit you in if we can put it in the release or whatever, whereas like I think it was my 3rd day at the company at Spotify, and I wanted to set up an SSO between the 2 systems that I had to the login. And I went down to the person responsible owning that system. His name is Matthias. I think he's still at the company too. And he literally said, "Okay, do you want to do it now, or do you want to come back tomorrow? Or I can do it over lunch." And I was like, "Hold on, like, what is this actually like happening?" And I think that's a constant feeling that's always stuck around and stayed with the company,
Uh-huh.
that we want to like improve things. We want to, be better. We want to grow. We want to,
Nice.
um,
Nice. And it's basically coming from the bottom. I mean, from their employees up, and their with ideas and their participation in the product life, kind of.
yeah, exactly.
Nice, nice, nice. Because you came from very bureaucratic kind of request approvals, the queues, there are backlogs, there are, I don't know, or tenders where you have to make sure everything is documented, to a more passion technology driven, if I can say like this. Is it correct?
Yeah, and it was not only a process. It was also like the passion in the people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, that's why I felt a little bit like I wanted to continue helping an organization drive. But the assignment ended as a consultant, and then you go back, and then I wanted to like, okay, what's the next step? How do we improve this even further? So here I've gotten, yeah, almost 10 years of like, how do we get this further? How do we improve? And everyone has that same passion. Everyone is like really eager.
Great, great. It's
Fabulous.
nice to work with guys who share your passion and your goals. Let's get to your current position. So you're a senior EM, and let's start it easy. So what is your daily routine? What do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, do you work-wise, or do you want to hear the whole schedule? Because I've talked to a lot of my colleagues recently about this. So
Whatever I
um,
prefer. Let's get in the bigger picture for our listeners to understand the whole you as a person and you as a professional. That would be great.
okay, cool. So my daily routine. I right now I've started getting up early in the morning, around 4:30 to 5.
Oh my gosh.
I changed my schedule to, instead of staying up late, I get up early, and then I try to work out. I try to get out for a walk, get some sunlight into my eyes. Apparently, you're supposed to have 10 to 15 minutes sunshine to help get that adenosine, the sleep hormone, out, that I've learned from a bunch of podcasts I've listened to recently. Yeah, so then I get back at 6 o'clock. I try to have a cup of coffee, sit on the stoop before my son usually wakes up 6:30 to 7, and then I pick him up. Feed him breakfast. Then I start working around 8.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I work a lot with European time zones
Mm-hmm.
and European teams. So usually the block between, I don't know, 9 to 12, because 8 to 9 I think is like startup for me, and like reading through messages and email I respond to some. And 9 to 12 is a lot of one-on-ones and a lot of meetings with like teams on the European side of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And then between, try to have a lunch, short lunch, maybe get out, get some more sunshine. But then in the afternoons, I have a lot more like focus time for myself, or one-on-ones and meetings with the US side of the organization.
Do you have colleagues in their Asia?
No, we don't.
Like you, because this is a very different time zone from the US, right? That was their break or schedule a lot.
Yeah, exactly. No, we have a work from anywhere policy, but each mission has like guidance of where. So we want to make sure that it's a feasible way for people to work. So we're located on the East Coast or the European time zone. So that's why all of the people in my organization are in that.
Nice. And
That
basically
range.
from their daily routine, so you have the calls based on their project needs that you have. Do you have kind of a daily sync with the team, or what kind of connectivity with the team do you have?
With the squads, you mean, or
With the
the
squad.
yeah. I meet them sometimes. I have tried to figure out how to interact the best way with the teams, with the actual squads, because since I'm a senior EM, I have 6 managers and I have 4 staff engineers. So the managers in themselves are the people that work with the teams, and then I work with the lead team, with the PMs and EMs and all that stuff. But what I do sometimes, and I haven't completed it yet, but I'm doing like skip level one-on-ones. So in my org, we're around 50 people. So I've met around 30 of them sitting on a one-on-one, hearing what they think about the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to not lose like touch with the people.
True.
Everyone.
And how often do you have one-to-ones?
One-to-ones with my managers and staff engineers every week. Every week, yeah. I seem to think that's a good recurring schedule usually. And then I have,
because I've seen their thread on Twitter basically saying that some manager decided to cancel on one-on-ones and basically invite people to talk to this person instead of putting all their regular meetings. And it was a very interesting experiment because I'm not sure it works for every organization. Therefore, I'm curious, how often do you have, and what do you think should be the best for you? Do you have like different with different people, or just scheduled with every person reporting to you like on a weekly basis?
Yeah, I think it depends on a couple of things. It depends on how many people you manage. And also, I always start weekly, and then you can change it later on. If we say, hey, weekly doesn't make sense, let's do it bi-weekly instead. I wouldn't want to do more than bi-weekly, because if you miss one, I'd rather be able to like miss one based on, their schedule or my schedule. But then it would be like a month in between.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would meet every month, that would be like 2 months. That wouldn't be feasible. And then it's not one-on-one. Then it's like quarterly planning.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I always start with weekly. But at one point in time, I had, I don't know how many, let's say 30 people that I had in my organization, because that was before hiring my managers, because we were scaling up. And at that point in time, I couldn't have weekly one-on-ones with every single person.
People, it's not doable.
Yeah, it was a little bit too much. And it was also, if you think about how we went from a like non-pandemic to a pandemic, I think there was a lot of like fatigue, a lot of Zoom fatigue, as we call it, or like Zoom call fatigue in the early days, or mid to. I think it's better now again. But that also changed the schedule frequency a little bit, because, it is a very psychological aspect. But maybe you don't think about it, but when you're looking into someone's eyes, that's very like confrontational, instead of when you're sitting in the same room and looking at the whiteboard, both of you, that's like, then you're teaming up and working something. So every meeting that you have, like confrontational, is taking more energy from you, which is also why it's a little bit more, historically was a little bit more exhausting for people, I think.
I think I've heard their direction, or a story or a saying about a direction where people look about a family. That goes like, the family becomes a family when both spouses look in the same direction. So when they have a common goal, instead of looking on each other and admiring each other, kind of fun being together, but when you reach to a common goal and start looking at that goal, whatever it is, a kid, a house, or the common future, or the common company, whatever, then you become a family. Right. And I think for a team, it's also the same.
Yes, very much so. I use that analogy, not that specific one, but I use it all the time around like how everything is relationships and how you're building family, and you can play on a lot of metaphors to that if you if you want to, just to give examples of how it works.
Mm-hmm. So apart from one-to-ones, what other meetings or types of meetings do you have?
We have, some plannings. I also have, so in my organization, we have two product area leads. So I'm the engineering product area lead, and I have a product area lead as my counterpart. So we try to meet one-on-one almost daily, actually, to just sync up of what we're doing and what we're doing. What else are we doing? We're writing a bunch of documents and like proposals of how to change. It's a lot more async communication now. We used to write, RFCs, as we call it, request for comment, already before, but it's a lot more now, I think. And then we plan. Used to plan quarterly. Now we plan every 6 months. So that takes a lot of time.
You mentioned, or we mentioned, her squads and teams as being people, organization, groups of people, right? And there, the concept of the first team.
Yes.
So what is your first team? What is your squad team? So can you kind of draw or explain like how do you look on your first team? Because I've heard you saying to area leads, and it sounds like your first team as you are working with that person on a daily basis. Is it correct, or is it goes in a different direction?
My first team, or our first team, is I believe the studio, as we call it, which is the higher level. What you see in the videos, it's called Tribe back then, but we changed the name to Studio. So the studio, or even the mission, that's where our first team is. And funny, because I love that analogy and I love that book. We've used it like over the past couple of, I don't know, 5 years here around like the teams, and I brought it up to the EMs and PMs, especially the EMs that I manage, around like what's your first team, etc. Around, for them to discuss and realize that it's not to sub optimize for the squad in itself, but we actually look at us as a unit, as a product area.
Yeah, I think it's
so far
it's a very good concept that's not being highly used, because people thinking about their squad and working with their squad only, and then they kind of limit themselves to this group of people. And when you work with your first team, kind of going broader and connecting with other peers, that helps you to see a bigger picture and also bring much more help to your squad, and much more information, and there are much more connections. Like when you mentioned that people should be connected and make sure they're not working on the same, or when they work, their connection works, and then the changes that they are making are not breaking their changes from the other team. And if you're not working in your first team, that will happen all the time.
Yeah, totally, I agree. I think the key point, though, and this is my learning from it, is like, don't sub-optimize for the smaller units, right? But always think higher, and think higher, because in the end, it doesn't matter, if your squad is doing great, if Spotify is not doing great, right? So it's about understanding the context of things.
True.
And that's why I think it's very, very valuable to like set that mindset. Like, don't sub-optimize. Like, if there's a higher priority working on this initiative instead of this initiative in this squad, then let's move some people over, or let's move that headcount over, etc. And I've had so many great examples of how we have worked at Spotify, and we actually not used to, we constantly do a lot of embeds where we help. So one of the products that I was part of launching and building is called Skill Exchange. It's out there. It's around facilitating those embeds where each squad can put up and say, or manager can say, hey, I need a data engineer for 2 months or a month, anyone out there in the organization that can help. Well, then other data engineers at the company can partake in that embed.
Oh, nice. So in our early conversation, you mentioned that you kind of help teams go faster, and this is, I see, as an example of the teams going faster, because basically you remove the barriers or the stones on their way by putting their people or the knowledge or the skills in the team for reaching the goal.
Yeah, exactly. There's two parts to that story, right? So if you know about the learning model, the 70-20-10, where 70% is on the job training, 20% is like social learning, and 10% is like actual physical like training, or you go to a course. It's also, what we look at it originally was around, hey, how do we make that 10%? Like, after you go a course, how do we make that 10% into a 70%? How can you actually, the first time you programmed, you didn't read a book and said, hey, now I'm going to like be really good at programming. It took a little bit of that 70% time and, blood, sweat, and tears in order to get better at it. And this is the same thing, right? So if you want to help your engineers grow and not be like in one single discipline all the time, or if you think about it, it's a concept called pigeonholing.
Mm-hmm.
If you started as a backend engineer, you're always going to work on backend engineer project, and then you're never going to go out. But maybe you're not passionate about backend engineering anymore. Or maybe the squad. We talked about the squad formation before. Maybe the squad has 4 backend engineers, but now you're starting to meddle a little bit in the data world. What do? Are you going to sit and say, "Hey, we don't have a data engineer. I don't know what to do," or are you actually going to be able to change that a little bit by having someone with a little bit of data engineering competence in there?
Yeah, and then you can basically learn on the go and kind of see whether you like it, and maybe you change your direction, right, from the backend to
exactly.
the data science, or whatever other parts of the team you really like, or DevOps, or that may be also very different for lots of people.
Yeah, so that's a big part of what we're doing with our talent that we have here at Spotify.
Nice.
What I mean with when I help other teams become faster, it's part of being the platform mission. So I don't we don't work with features out there, user facing features. We work on I was going to say the hardcore technical stuff, the infrastructure part. We used to be called IO as a tribe before, when we were called tribes, and then we split that up. So we're focusing on we have our CI systems, we have our BCS. We also, if you look, there's a bunch of blog posts out there. I can send you the links later on if you want to link it.
That would be great. I'll put here in the video in the description.
Yeah, around what we call fleet management. So what we noticed from when I started to now, there's a exponential growth in the amount of services that we have and create. There's not an exponential growth in the number of engineers. That's like a linear growth, right? So compared to then to now each engineer has to manage many more services, right? Also, if you think about a dependency that need to be updated, or a version of a library that needs to be bumped to the next version. If you think about every single service out there needs to be manually upgraded, that takes a lot of time. Not only effort, but it also takes a lot of calendar time. So we approach that in how do we have a fleet first mindset? And how do we stop thinking about it as services, but actually a fleet? So one of the teams that I'm working with or have in my organization is making those fleet-wide changes, making those updates and automatic dependency upgrades, etc. And in all, the outcome of that is, because then all the engineers out there don't have to update it, right? It's like operational toil that's taken away. So then they can spend all their time focusing on building the features for the end users out there.
I'm just curious whether you had an example of somebody from their product organization going to the platform organization because the person has been so fascinating of what you are doing, your organization is doing.
Yeah, all the time.
Because basically that's also kind of an internal product. It's a platform that helps other, and with a product you kind of go to their end users, right? Help them enjoy the music, have their uninterrupted experience, like from your ads that I'm listening all the time. And basically with a platform, you help internally and kind of double the effect of helping the end users.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really fascinating, we have a lot of people that have transferred in between, people that worked in the platform mission to going out building features and vice versa. But what's really interesting, we've always had a philosophy or a long time, we call it build infra together. And this is also what I said before about embeds, right? Where people come to embed with us to build the features instead of us sending sheets of requirements. If you think about my consultancy background, it's we have these list of requirements that we have to develop, and then you need to validate it, and then you need to go through different cycles of testing and acceptance and whatnot. Whereas here, when we're saying build infra together, we'll rather sit next to our customer and build it with them, build them during the same product, during the same objective. We create an embed and saying, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Do you want to come help us build the next platform for this and that? and often there's a lot of people who are from the feature teams who are interested. That's like value because that's our customer.
Mm-hmm.
So in the platform, that's very valuable to us.
I'm just curious because with lots of products, well, especially if they are internal, not exposed to some concepts like, I don't know, security comes in the last place because nobody will value the security of the solution, right? That you are building. How do you explain like, well, the solution has to be secure, scalable, all those kind of things to your users? Because they want a feature, right? Kind of, they want a feature to manage the fleet, to deploy faster, but there are also lots of non-functional requirements that are coming along that they might not be thinking about.
Right. Oh, sorry. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. Are you talking about like security requirements on the solutions
On the
we're
platform,
developing?
not on the product. Because product, I'm sure you have a special team or well a set of teams or that works. But internal, if you're building an internal product, that might be a different story where you could say, well, we neglect the non-functional requirements.
Yeah, well, we try to not to. We try to work with the security department to make sure that we develop secure products
Mm-hmm.
there too. Um, it's one of the things where you're talking about first team. Like we of course don't want to do anything that's risky from a overall level, right? So if you want extra eyes on from security, it's another team to reach out to, and they're happy to help too.
Yeah, so
We're all in the
basically,
same boat.
you understand the concepts and the people, and you're getting them together when you need them.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a nice actually position that you have inside their Spotify to build this platform to make or help the company grow.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's really, really exciting because, like I said, I didn't start in this department before at first. I started with internal systems, but then it's when I moved to the US actually in 2017
Mm-hmm.
that I met the manager uh, for one of the teams that I transferred over into, and I was like really passionate about the idea of like internally seeing our engineer customers as customers, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, you should upgrade this, you should upgrade this," we should take more of the toil, right? We should see them as customers and you know treat them very well.
If there
That's
is
exciting.
something that you don't like about your current position or about your current or place where you work.
No, I honestly don't. I think this is like I'm extremely fortunate. It's not something I don't like. I know you had an interest in whether or not I like miss engineering or sometimes. So I do sometimes. It's like you have to like encourage that part of yourself through different means. I started doing like a development course on the side,
Oh, nice.
just for my just for my own engineering need. you
Mm-hmm.
know it has nothing to do with the position itself,
Uh-huh.
but it's like sometimes I think it all goes in a pendulum, right? So sometimes you want to be more detail focused and sometimes you want to be more overarching like strategy focused. So right now I feel like I'm in a very, very good spot for me.
But there might be something that you're, well, let's say not really like, but not enjoying that you will have to do because you have to do. So because there is no perfect position. Look, we are
Yeah.
living in the gray world, right? There is no black and white. So there are some things that are might be like, well, okay, I can live with this because there are 99% is absolutely great, and that 1%, well, I take it because I have to.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any right now. I guess it's a lot of context switching in all of these meetings. You know what I mean? You have to be okay with context switching, and you have to be okay with longer feedback loops too. I think that's a normal thing when you go from an engineer to a manager
Mm-hmm.
in general. Like when you make that step, instead of just getting the result, trying to recompile your code and get an error right away, you actually have to like you put so much effort and emphasis into other people and teams, and then it takes a little bit longer to see the results of
Mm-hmm.
it. But it's also like for me, it's also way more rewarding.
So you mentioned two very interesting things. Basically, the context switching, that the person has to have the ability to do it or to stand this as a manager, and also their kind of long investment in the team, in the work that you do before you see the result. Are there any others or things that the manager should be able to do as an engineering manager?
Is they be able to do?
To be able to do, or to what they should kind of focus or be prepared to. There are people who are switching to the engineering managers, like getting rid of the code, or not working with the code, or whatever comes to your mind. Building the trust is one of the things that lots of people say, because it's a very different dimension, right? When you start working with people instead of numbers in your code.
Yeah, I think, for anyone who aspires to be a manager, I think you should look at the old article called like maker schedule versus manager schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Founder of Y Combinator, I think he wrote that article. I'll send that link to you too. But it's extremely, extremely interesting of like, especially as an engineer, you need like focus time. Whereas like a manager, you skip in a lot of meetings. You still need focus time, but you jump in between.
Mm-hmm.
So you need that context switching part. But you need to be more respectful with other people's time, especially if you manage a team of engineers. You shouldn't just place your meetings whenever you want it, because that might be right in the focus time of your engineers, right? So don't just place it because you have a free slot there. Look at like after their lunch, or after stand up or whatever. So you try to place it. It's an important piece to think about. What else did you say around like skills as a manager? I feel like as a manager, we look at like 4 pillars. It's people, it's tech, it's delivery, and it's business impact.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes as an engineer, you don't look at some of that. Obviously, you normally don't do people management first. So it's like technology is usually where engineers going into managers are the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's where you spend most of your time.
Right.
Then you need to be okay with having the team and having other people make decisions. When it comes to technology as a manager, you're accountable that a decision is being made. But then, it takes a year or two, and then you're not the most knowledgeable person in the room anymore when it comes to technology, right? Unless you sit there day to day. But you will bring in other skills. There's other skills as a manager than it is as an engineer. It's like two very different jobs, I would say.
Absolutely.
I think it's
absolutely. And as you mentioned, the pendulum.
No, I was going to say, I think it's the biggest change in anyone's career because it happens after a couple of years when you've gotten comfortable with being an engineer, and then you all of a sudden are like, because the first time you go from school to working, that's a big change. And then when you go from engineer to manager, it's like after already starting to like create that identity and establishing yourself in the workplace, and you're like, oh, this is brand new. This is completely new. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I think that every single person I've talked to have felt that feeling.
But like some people can go from school to project manager. I'm not sure you have those in product organizations, but project managers can kind of say, well, okay, I think I can manage people. Why don't I become an engineering manager in Spotify, for example? Will it be the right path for a person who has, let's say, limited technical background?
I think you need to have some technical background. And so when you say limited, to me, like a project manager seems someone who has 0. I don't think that's doable. I think it's helpful or needed if you have an engineering background.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't think you need to be like the lowest level engineer or the most like 40 years of engineering before you can become an engineering manager. We usually tend to say around the senior engineer is when you go over. That's when you can make an impact. But then you have to grow in other areas. You need to know that it's not just the same job, right? You have to grow in the delivery part and the people part. And
True. Yeah, because there is lots of debate, like for the managers in general, whether they need to have engineering experience or not, because there is like a project management institute saying, well, you don't have to do it. There is like set of practices that you have to implement, follow, or try out to kind of be successful in managing their team. Whereas if you go for engineering management, their name stands for itself, saying that there is an engineering part, right? Not just their management part.
Right. I think it depends. Like I would not recommend anyone to become an engineering manager without an engineering experience. I do think, if you're working at a small company with a small team, maybe you can spend some time engineering in that role too. Because I think you need to like understand engineering. You need to understand the concepts and what you do. You don't need to be the absolute best coder, because the absolute best coders should code, right?
True. And don't make that mistake. Don't put them to managers unless they really, really want, and you explain them 5 times what they will lose when they go from coding to people coding, so to say.
Yeah, and sometimes they should make the move. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's their way of growing outside their own comfort zone. And maybe they can be awesome managers too. They just need to know it's a very different job. But going from someone who is like a project manager, first of all, I think it would be challenging, depending on the size of the project. But I think it would be challenging to become a project manager right out of school. You haven't really seen a lot. You know what I mean? So it's always beneficial to have a lot more experience in an area before you start like managing or motivating people.
Yeah, but still, you have to get their experience right somewhere. So you just go step by step, or go through the courses, go through their experience, and then kind of become from their project coordinator. Then you go further and further. So it's a step by step experience. And what I typically say to project managers, just learn their vocabulary that engineers use. Like you have to be able to explain in 2 sentences what is a continuous integration. What is VCS? You don't have to go in their deep details. You don't have to code, but you have to be able to explain in simple words, like 2-3 sentences, all those concepts that engineers use in your company.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have a challenge, working with the team.
True. I want to switch a topic, which you mentioned that you had been growing different teams throughout your career, as before you joined Spotify, as well in Spotify. How many teams have you created?
I honestly don't know. I created or being part of creating. My first organization I was part of, there were first 3 engineers or 4 engineers, but in 2 different teams, and we grew that out into 30 people. I did not manage everyone. We had a bunch of other people hiring, and a bunch of managers too. But you're always part, like it's a teamwork about creating those teams. Here, this organization I'm in right now, I actually started from 2 headcounts that I took from another team. We reinvested those, and then we grew it out into, what we are right now, let's say 15 total, including all the PMs and EMs. But, it's a passion of mine to start teams.
So it's a third passion, technology, music, and growing teams.
exactly growing teams.
Nice. Yeah. And we all the time hear about success stories. Tell us about the failure. What did you have any failure, and what was it when you were growing or creating a team?
Well, I feel like one failure that I've done before historically is not setting up a success in the short term. What that means is because you always say, hey, we want to do this, and you set a vision and you talk about what you want to accomplish. What's very, very important in that is you have a quick win, a really quick win after a while. You demo whatever you built or you hacked on, whatever. Celebrate it as much as possible. Since I'm a person that I said, I want to improve and I want to do things, I have, in hindsight, not celebrated some of the things enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just saying, hey, let's go to the next step. Not that it's a huge failure, but if you take the time, it creates so much more like buy-in and emphasis in the team and for the team.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a lesson that I would recommend to everyone who starts a new team.
Nice,
You know,
nice. First, when you mentioned, I was thinking about being like a friend there, because I work for the city, and sometimes you have to show results for the outside kind of. Well, this is a achievement that I got a very nice feature, and said, well, okay, another politics talking. But then I realized when you explain that it's about giving back to the team, and making sure the
yeah,
team is binding together and the energy kind of grows when the team understands what they have achieved together as a team instead of or just a bunch of people.
yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. And then if you do one of those external, like you're talking about, like doing a demo and getting external buy-in, make sure you feed that feedback into the team, because the maybe you're sitting there with a PM or whatever, someone else is demoing, and not everyone could attend that and hear all the great words they were saying. Make sure that that is funneled back to the team. To actually see that recognition, so everyone feels the pride of what they've built in that.
Yeah, well, nice, nice. It's actually a very nice advice for myself and for our listeners to make sure you bring their celebration and joy and the binding of the team together when it's really there, right? So it's not about just having fun, but rather, well,
No. It's celebrating a success. It's like getting the win. And another thing that I think is like really important is to not try to over-engineer like processes and stuff in the beginning.
mm-hmm,
You know, sometimes there's like debates on what tools should you use to handle like the backlog. And it doesn't really matter. Everyone comes in with opinions before. Everyone has different experiences, using different tools. Get something quick and dirty up. Do post-it if you want to. That puts you on a quicker path to the mission,
mm-hmm.
rather than like debating back and forth whether or not to use
But I'm
Trello.
just
Yeah.
curious. Let's talk about their situation because I had this in the past, and I was also building a team. And when you get a bunch of experienced people together, they start debating about different things, as you mentioned. Let's say about the right now Git branching model. What model should we use? Should we use that or this? And then it takes you a while to kind of make sure they agree on some model. Would you rather go with them through this process or explain them that they should stick to one decision, try it out, and focus on the mission? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or in this specific example, what you can do is I think you as a manager is accountable for a decision being made, right? But it's better to make a decision
Mm-hmm.
than no decision at all in most of the cases, right? So what you want to do is you want to move forward. So if you can find, you know, the denominator that they agree on, and then you can move forward with that, right? At least you're moving from a current situation into something better.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I meant.
Uh-uh.
Instead of like sitting, because everyone has strong opinions. We're in the engineering world. Tab versus spaces is like the most long-term running, conundrum and joke, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can debate that forever, but you can just say, hey, let's start with this, and if we find it doesn't work for us, then we'll change later down the line.
True. Are there any specific tips and tricks for building distributed and remote teams? Because with COVID, we are all in this situation where we are, well, before we couldn't meet together, right? Right now it's easier, but lots of people got used to working remote. As you also mentioned, their Spotify internal policy. What would be then the three important things for building this distributed team? Distributed and remote, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to spend some time together.
Mm-hmm.
but the difference between being in the office and you got to chit chat around the coffee machine, or you did to do whatever, versus now remote, we tend to go into a meeting with like a purpose and an agenda, and we do that, and then we go out. So we don't really get to know the people behind it. I think that's like the analogy to what you said before with the family and how you create a family where you're working together. A family knows each other. That's why it's a family, right? So if you take the opportunity to actually like introduce each other, or do like an Airbnb event. I know they do, like, I don't know, we did one with the with one of my teams, like a Harry Potter tour in London.
Oh,
No one was in London, but we did it online, right? So
okay.
it was like a quiz and everything. Really funny, really great. Create some social like interaction in between the teams. That I think is very, very valuable.
So
Um, yeah,
kind of to get to know each other and to get used to each other.
yeah. We're all different people, and we're all in the same boat. We're all sharing this like goal of what we want to accomplish. So, you know, if we can get to know each other more, that means that our our boat ride will be together and more pleasurable, right?
Yeah, enjoyable, right? You had another tip you wanted to share.
Around the process again, or around what tools. Skip less about the process, and you can just copy whatever process you have done before in a different team and start with that, and then improve. It's almost like the classical buy versus build scenario. You don't have to try to reinvent the wheel every single time. If you're jumping into an area, like, copy some processes from your existing team right now, and go with that.
Yeah, nice, nice. And did you have any struggles when you were moved to remote with? Well, you started remote, right, in Spotify, because it's a worldwide organization, as you mentioned. But when you had COVID and you were stuck at home, I thought I think in Sweden you had less restrictions than in other parts of Europe, as far as I remember. But otherwise, you couldn't
Yeah.
travel right around the Europe. So what was the hardest part?
I mean, to me, at that point in time, I actually started one or two of the teams that we talked about before that I love to start. So I interviewed people remote. We started with remote, and it's like, we also didn't know how it was, at that point in time, being distributed. If I would have known, I would have spent more time like socializing. Yeah, I don't. It was a challenge for everyone, I think. I don't have any great answers. I was in New York at the point in time,
Yeah,
which was like a
true. You
horrible
mentioned, right?
lockdown.
Yeah, it was because in Sweden, as far as I remember, it was easier, and people are still debating whether it was a right decision or not to have their partial lockdown, as far as I understand. But indeed, in New York, it
Yeah,
was a hard time.
I don't know. I also feel like one does not fit every place. One tactic. So Sweden is a little bit more dispersed with the population than New York is, for instance.
True,
It's like
absolutely.
probably different tactics.
Absolutely. Okay, well, is there anything we should discuss on what we planned, or I think we covered most of the things?
No, I don't know if you want to hear more about what we do when it comes to like developer productivity.
Absolutely,
I don't know if
absolutely.
you've seen our backstage being open sourced.
No,
Go
no,
to
no.
backstage.io. So we created this internal developer portal a while back. I can't remember how many years, but a while back, because basically the question was, who owns this service? How can I page this? This is down, So we created this. It was called something different before, but now it's called Backstage. And a couple of years ago, we actually open sourced that version. So if you go to backstage.io, it's an open source version. We donated it to CNCF around, creating the developer portal the same way we do it at Spotify, right?
So is it the
And then
same that you're using internally, or is it a different version?
Same, but a little bit different because we have like proprietary or internal technology that we can't use out there. But what we're doing is we're taking some of our internal plugins, as we say, and we're actually making them available as plugins in the open too, which is pretty cool because that's a part of how we like showcase our engineering culture and seeing how you can adopt it too.
Yeah, I think I came across several your blog posts, not your, but from the company, from Spotify. I would say, or this is one of their blogs you should follow as an engineer, just to see what those big companies are doing and how they publish and share their experience. Because this is really nice when you put from some articles like, wow, that's an interesting story and the interesting technology combination, how you work it out.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
So thanks for
that's why I wanted to join the platform mission,
Yeah, thanks for sharing this to the public and basically kind of bring back their thing that you do internally to the whole community around the world, so that we can benefit from that, not only from the music we listen, but also from their technologies that we could reuse in the daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll make sure I send you all the links that I've been talking about right now.
I appreciate it. We'll put them in their description and in their titles here during the video so that people can listen up. All right. I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you very much, Johan, for this conversation. It was very, very interesting. And I'm glad we could finally agree and arrange this conversation. So thank you for your time and for sharing your thoughts and experience.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And the last question, if people want to find you, reach out to you, where should they go?
Reach out to me, where should I go? I don't know. LinkedIn is probably good for me. It's my first name, last name, of course.
We'll put in the description your LinkedIn account, so if people want to follow you or chat to you about something about the platform, I encourage you to, but it's up to you to check out their responses and the requests.
Will do.
Good. All right. Thank you very much.